Backing of Uniform Civil Code by the Delhi High Court has once again stirred the polarizing debate, which is as old as the creation of modern India itself. The Uniform Civil Code is envisioned as a common set of civil laws that govern varied matters of marriage, adoption, inheritance, succession, and divorce for all citizens, irrespective of their religion. While on one hand, many feminists, economists, and developmental scientists welcome it as a step towards getting rid of misogynistic and regressive practices sanctioned under various religious personal laws, others decry it as a threat to India's diversity and an encroachment on the right to religious freedom promised in the Constitution. Many recommend an incremental approach instead of a broad sweep. But Uniform Civil Code's defenders argue that lack of progress in past 75 years proves that incremental approach has failed. Yet a top-down imposition of personal laws without a broad consensus is precisely what the drafters of our constitution had wanted to avoid. That is why UCC was made a directive principle only. The idea was that it should only be implemented when India was ready for it. Recent statements by Justice Pratibha Singh of Delhi High Court claims that India might be ready now. She said the modern Indian society was gradually becoming homogeneous and the traditional barriers of religion, community, and caste are slowly dissipating, and thus Uniform Civil Code ought not to remain a mere hope. So today we have a panel of top experts from India, experts in law, in women's rights, as well as experts who have the academic understanding of the Constitution to discuss and so that we can understand whether India is actually ready for Uniform Civil Code. So allow me to introduce our panelists. We have with us today Ms. Pinky Anand, who's a well-known politician and lawyer. She has served as an additional Solicitor General of India at the Supreme Court. And also she has served as the head of BJP's All India Legal Cell. We have with us Ms. Hasina Khan, who's a long-time campaigner for gender justice, especially for Muslim women and other minorities. She's the founder of Bibak Collective, an umbrella organization of several women's rights groups. We have Ms. Malvika Rajkotia. She's a lawyer with a focus on family and property law. She's widely considered as one of India's most successful divorce lawyers. She's also the author of critically acclaimed book, Intimacy Undone, Law of Marriage, Divorce and Family. We have Ms. Charu Pragya, who's a lawyer and media panelist at BJP. She runs free legal aid centers for women across India and has helped build a network of lawyers to provide free legal assistance to disadvantaged women. We have Dr. Narendra Pani, who's a professor at National Institute of Advanced Studies, Bengaluru. He's the author of Inclusive Economics, Gandhian Method and Contemporary Policy. Welcome all of you to Argumentative Indians. It's an honor to have you on our platform. So to kickstart, I would like to invite you for opening comments on the question whether India is ready for Uniform Civil Code. And I would like to start with Ms. Pinky Anand.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I have to take this while traveling down. The timing was a little different, so I have the requirement of corona and masks is something which we have to keep to. So if you don't mind, I will continue with the mask till such stage as I can reach a destination. I'm really happy to join you in this discussion. And I believe actually this UCC has been going on a long time. As much as so many other discussions around the constitutional changes that might be required in the light of me properly?
Yeah, we can hear you well, Ms. Anand. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me? Well, good, good.
Yeah, we can hear you.
So this debate, frankly, we have been
I think we lost her. So that's
point. Do me a favor, just take it through with someone else just now and come back to me in 5 minutes. I'm
Sure,
hoping
sure,
that
no
we,
problem.
yeah. Mhm.
Sure, no problem. Miss Malika Rajkotia, do you want to kickstart the debate?
Yeah, hi. Thank you. So my position is that when they say India, who says India is right for the Uniform Civil Code? That also comes from a relative position. I don't think there is no objective analysis as to rightness. And when we are talking of something as basic as freedom to intermarry is becoming such an issue as never before, with regard to the issues of love jihad and so on and so forth, and where cultural identity is feeling so threatened, to now talk of Uniform Civil Code seems that it will be at the risk of an integral constitutional value, which is pluralism, which includes multiple cultural identities. And the one thing that Uniform Civil Code will do is affect cultural identities, because many of these cultural identities draw their persona from the nature of their family laws. Now, that's one part. Then comes the other part, which is that when we talk of the Uniform Civil Code, and particularly that the conversation has become so shrill only with the present ruling powers, is almost that it's suspicious, because the seemingly gender balanced approach seems like a bogey. What really will end up doing is another forum for minority bashing, particularly Muslim bashing. So we have to start by saying that as a feminist, yes, I too am in favor of gender just laws that can be achieved within each cultural identity separately, because the one thing that all cultural identities, no matter what their differences, have in common is that they are all oppressively patriarchal. And therefore, in that context, there are two ways to go about it. One is to go organically, as you had said right at the beginning, as had Dr. Ambedkar and so on. But the truth of it is that organic point, has it brought us to the point where we can talk of a uniform civil code? And my answer is an absolutely undoubted no. We are not ready. Given the political climate, we are not ready. And most important, this seems to be an abstract conversation, because at no point of time has anybody actually delivered a code. What are we talking about? What will it have? Will it have only everything as a Hindu right? What will happen to the Hindu family and their customs? What will happen to the marginalized? What will happen to the tribal rights and their customs, which are also part of, at the moment, their personal law, and therefore has to become part of the debate. The Uniform Civil Code on not just Justice Pratibha Singh, but over the years, from time to time, various courts, and the Supreme Court on 2-3 occasions has also said it is time, it is time. Now, it may be, it is an observation. With regard to a directive principle, the court cannot be passing any directions that the state should be on what the state should be legislating on. Now, it may be time when you think of confusion of laws. But the point is there really a confusion? To my mind, the laws have been organically developing in their separate identity silos, comfortably towards being more gender equal thus far. However, if we are talking gender justice, which is meaningful, without attacking cultural and religious pluralism, which is a constitutional value, then yes, we can talk of uniform gender equality. It doesn't mean it's eliminating anything. There's a difference between uniform and common. All all women from all their various cultural identities can have equal rights within that cultural identity. It is being interchangeably used as we need a common civil code. So to my mind, that too needs to be, there is nothing on paper that we are discussing. So over the past, particularly in the last 6-7 years, every time there is this abstract debate without ever a discussion on what are we talking about. Is it one bill? Is it several bills amongst each community? And so on and so forth. And the Goa bill, by the way, which is talked about always as this great exception and rule, which could become the format. I want you to know that it allows bigamy amongst Hindus. The Goa code does. And also has several exceptions, even as applicable to the Hindus. So the Hindus resisted the Goa civil code even when the Portuguese tried to legislate. So it's a very emotive subject, which again, typical of lack of nuance, is addressed as a political agenda. And that is where, in these times, makes it an uncomfortable, if not dangerous argument. You told me I should speak for 2 minutes, so I rushed as much as I could. Otherwise,
Okay.
go on.
That was very good. Thank you, Ms. Rajkot. Yeah, we'll go to Ms. Anand now.
Thanks so much. I'm sorry for that connectivity issue. But basically, I find it very difficult to understand why the timing of a discussion is always made the subject matter of a discussion and made it, you cast aspersions on the motivation behind it. The whole question, I think, is something which has been there for a while. It's not today that this issue has arisen. This has been flagged a few times over, definitely at this point of time. But the flagging of this issue started way back from judgments of the Supreme Court, as much as discussions in the society, as much as when the Constitution came into being. Article 35 was converted to Article 44 because the feeling was the time was not right, as you rightly said in your opening comments. So the only reason you didn't have a uniform civil code is not because you wanted not to have diversity or plurality, but because at that time it was felt that the feelings, etc., coming from British times, starting your own independent movement, there may be some other reflections or deflections which needed to be tackled. But talking about so-called current times at this point of time, firstly, you've had a change in perception through different issues. Secondly, when you see cases like triple talaq, for example, now I was also arguing for the government in triple talaq, and please let us understand, why do we target it as against A community or B community? These kind of issues, I think this is unfair. You are having subjects which are antithetical to modern society, subjects which are antithetical to diversity between people and migration. You're having a population, a youth population today, which is engaging in various migrating kind of relationships in marriage, which need to be tackled by some uniform process. Otherwise, you're going from one to the other to the third. You're having concepts, thirdly, which are not in consonance with any concept of today's world. I won't say a modern world. There's nothing a modern or an ancient world. The point is in today's world. So when something like, for example, I just flag it because that is what has been held, triple talaq, the issue is whenever we try to drag in religion into the story, it becomes a different surface. But is personal law ultimately the subject of religious law, so to say? That is an area which, in fact, triple talaq and the judgments there categorically lay down. It isn't. We are unnecessarily relating issues of religion with issues of, for example, like succession, like inheritance, like marriage, like divorce, like adoption. Today, for example, in several communities, you can't have adoption. Whereas you are finding that this is the way that modern society has been dealing with the situation, whether for love of a child or to have another child or to ultimately adopt a child. So you need to have a system which can tackle all these. And the only view appears to be, what do you do? So you take each of the laws in question and look at the good points. It's not whether you look at the Goa law. Goa law is only an example. It's not a bit, of course, it's a law. But you are having equality amongst different people. That's one part of it. But how you want to have equality, you might find some good practice in one part of law as opposed to another, let us say, personal law. So you take the good points. The question is having uniformity, having homogeneity in that sense. plurality and marriage and divorce doesn't run together. And that is the reason I think we need to look at Uniform Civil Code very clearly. And it is high time that we were able to face it. Even Triple Talaq took so many years as a judgment to come. And ultimately, it was a case which was well supported even by the government to say, we do need a change. We do need. So it could have been done by the court as unconstitutional or by the government itself, whichever way it happened. And frankly, it has been lauded by everybody, even in the court. We found that each and every member of every community was ultimately supporting it, though initially the same viewpoints had been expressed about personal laws and religious laws and other propositions. But finally, it was, you cannot have a law today which can say to a woman without an adjudicatory process, talak, 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 and that's the end of the story. And somebody can walk out, leaving a woman completely desolate with her entire position. This is unacceptable. That's about all.
Ms. Anand, thank you. So before you, Ms. Raj Kotia had made a case that, she had made a case that like we don't need to make it all common. The code doesn't have to be common, but within each you can bring in gender equality, and that took place. So what about like using this approach going forward also? Why can't we just correct the gender inequalities in each personal law, as opposed to like coming up with like one size fits all kind of law for the country?
I'm afraid I'm not saying what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. That's a viewpoint that can be considered. But the question is opposition to having, whether by way of a uniform civil code or to have every personal law being made consonant with current day realities and the way of life and the way civil society should be. That's an academic issue. We can sit down on it forever and go. But it's like you hold your nose from the front or from the back. So ultimately, if you agree to a certain objective, how to do the objective, I don't think today's debate would be on the process. So the process itself is not an issue. It's a principle which has to be accepted. And then, of course, the lawmakers would take care of how it should be done. So, today, again, let's go back for a minute to something like the criminal maintenance. Section 125 CRPC. An attempt was made to distinguish personal law and say it is not applicable to A or B community. Ultimately, it was held, if a woman is destitute, does it matter who and what she is or what her religion is? Destitution is destitution. It will not survive in today's world. And the liability or the responsibility would be for each and every person in each and every religion, and therefore commonality. That's why, in fact, I mean, go back to when the law was made, when the constitution was made. Dr. Ambedkar actually said criminal laws will be uniform. Personal laws, because of the emotive feeling at that point of time. But we have gone down 70 years of the constitution today. We are a society today which is migrating not only within India, but outside India as much. Inter-religion marriage is taking place under all circumstances. NRI marriages, you are dealing with each and every one of these issues. You want rights for people. It doesn't matter whether they belong to A, B or C. Community, caste also. Why only community? Even caste. You cannot have distinction and say, no, there will be a separate set of rules. So whether you have it as a uniform, as it is being talked about, or whether, as Malvika says, it should be across every religion. The point is, don't bring religion into it. That is my only contention. It doesn't matter whether you do it in one form or the other form. The forms are not the most important.
I just want to say one thing. For what Pinky is talking about, the Special Marriage Act and the Foreign Marriages Registration Act, which funnels into the Special Marriage Act, and the consequent succession rights are already in place as the secular law, which any couple can opt into.
Right. I want to talk a little bit more in detail on the Special Marriage Act, but before that, let's get the academic view in. Dr. Pani, please.
I'm looking at it from outside. I'm not a lawyer. And there's one big difference in law. I think anybody who's been to a court will notice that a lawyers talk in terms of what should happen, whereas most people outside talk in terms of what's practically happening. Right? And as far as anyone who's been to a legal process is concerned, the primary difficulty is that we don't even have a common criminal law in practice. This is severely skewed in favor of the powerful, both in government and elsewhere, the selective use of the laws against some people, against others. And I'm not even talking about, the politically charged cases that are often cited. I'm looking at a situation where hundreds of thousands of people are in prison without being proven to be guilty. You're really talking about people who are there for decades of their lives in prison, and then they come out and very often they'll prove to be not guilty. Now, in that kind of a situation, we clearly have a skewed legal framework. And to talk of a uniform, any code before we sort that out is a bit presumptuous. But even assuming that we are able to come to that, that the reason why you have that great divide, I know there are legal professionals who will have their own explanations, but from outside, it looks as if there is no moral compulsion to address this issue. For 70 years, we have not had a uniform civil code. We can talk about that. But the fact is, for 70 years, we haven't sorted out a problem of having youngsters put in prison for the best part of their lives when they are not guilty. And that is a critical part of the story. Now, if we now, and that happens because of the lack of moral pressure, and that lack of moral pressure is because of the great contrast between what people believe to be morally right and what the law believes to be correct. So I am morally convinced that I can do what I want because I'm doing the right thing, and then I'll adjust the law in whichever way I can, or however, using whatever power that comes to me. Now, this process is what will ensure that a uniform civil code will not come through even if you want, not in the larger sense that it is meant. First, like if you take the largest single, everyone sees it as a CK getting opposition from minority communities. Forget it, take the Hindu community itself. The largest single mass movement against uniformity in religious practice in recent times has been Sabrimala. Right? No uniform civil code will put it down in writing that it's perfectly all right to keep women of an age where of a menstruating age out of a temple. You're not going to get that in any law. But in actual practice, irrespective of what the Supreme Court said, in actual practice, they couldn't intervene. Now, if you're going to put in together, and this will go on, if you really have a broad-based civil code, it must extend to Hindu undivided family. It will have to take a view on what you do with gotras in the process of marriage. Whether we might have a law that says that it doesn't matter what gotra you belong to, but in practice, it is seen as a crime punishable by death. You're killing people because they get married when they're in the same gotra. So this is the situation that you're trying to intervene in. And the point that you must have at uniformity will take care of it is a bit presumptuous. It's 21st century presumptuousness. You've had differences in these issues going back to Vedic times. You talk of Vedic philosophy as if it was a unified philosophy. You had 6 Vedic schools. And the same period you had the materialist school of the materialist schools. I'm not even talking about Buddhism, Jainism, etc. Now, when dealing with that kind of diversity, the obvious way forward is to recognize that any group of people who agree on a common set of values, which they will adhere to, must be allowed to do so till that time that they adversely affect others. Right? Now, if I'm a group working it out for myself without hurting others, that's fine. And then if I still have the problem that I'm therefore creating laws that are grossly unfair, particularly to women, and as somebody said, everything is patriarchal, and that's very true. But if you're going to create laws, please create a common minimum set of code, which no law will be allowed to cross. Just a minimum. You can call it a human rights code. And believe me, we need a human rights code, not just for civil law, but also for criminal law. We just need, if you keep a minimum that no law will be allowed to cross, then you allow each one to make their own laws. Because people are getting into it voluntarily. Of course, if there's an involuntary pressure, you need to bring in the idea of a minimum code into it. So I think there are ways in which, I just end with just one point, that we have spent millennia recognizing that diversity is a part of it. This is all societies, certainly Hindu society, as I already said, there are multiple strains of thought within Hinduism. To believe that we can now suddenly bring uniformity into the entire process is just 21st century arrogance. I don't think it is anything more than that.
Thank you, Dr. Pani. So it's interesting, actually, you mentioned the ancient societies and all, and Vedic times where there was still a lot of diversity. But I would argue that generally in society, most societies, not just India, laws were based on customs. And small units, people, they lived in smaller societies and laws were based on customs. But it was only about 100 or so years ago that nation states emerged, which would have these common set of laws, everything codified. But in the world where we live in, not even nations, now we are becoming a global world, as Pinky Anand pointed out, that people are now migrating everywhere within India as well as abroad. Doesn't it become problematic when one person from one society moves in with another person of another society, or you go to work in Bangalore and suddenly you find customs are all different there?
Only when you're looking for uniformity. Hundreds of millions of Indians have migrated to other countries, right? And they follow the laws of that place. Right. And you must remember, when you brought up the issue of nationhood, one of the reasons why countries split into, you have a place like Europe, you have a large numbers of countries, each of which each cultural identity wants to be a country of its own. Now, India is an experience largely because of the Gandhian idea that nationalism is civilizational and it is not just cultural in terms of a specific culture. That's why you were allowed, Ambedkar, despite all his strong differences with Gandhi, went along with that, right? And which is why he was not willing to intervene or create and lay down a single civil law. So you have this process, this variety that is there. India is a country, it's a large country, it's almost an entire continent. Now, if you're going to seek uniformity, then you're trying to push yourself into the Chinese kind of thinking, which is completely against all Indian tradition.
Absolutely, but Ambedkar was himself one of the biggest champions of a uniform civil code. He wanted to have it. He did not want imposition of it.
Yeah, he did not want the imposition of it. That's the point. He was seeking a code that would give Dalits basic human rights. Basic. You're talking about a society where there was untouchability. You're not talking about. I mean that.
I want to get Ms. Pragya into this. So. Charu, right now it's BJP, which is basically looking to bring uniform civil code. BJP, it was one of the things on their agenda. So we have seen the style of BJP when it comes to CAA or farm laws or other issues. It's a little bit of the way it's perceived is it's a top-down approach they like to have. Surprise people and go top-down, and everybody has to accept it, take it or leave it. Not much of consultation. So it sort of seems that if we go with this approach also in the Uniform Civil Code, would we be betraying the promise made by the drafters of the Constitution that it will only come when India is ready for it? And the recent, I think 2018, BJP themselves had commissioned, I think you guys are much more experts on this, but there was a law commission which looked into the feasibility of Uniform Civil Code. And the conclusion was that India is not ready for a Uniform Civil Code and it would be impractical. So I want to ask you, what is your view on this? Is India ready or it doesn't matter? It's high time, 75 years done, got to accept it.
See, Yajur, my take on this is sometimes very simplistic, but I understand the matter is complex and it requires a greater thought. And when you say that Bharatiya Janata Party has a top-down approach, I don't agree, because every single person who is standing up to vote in Parliament has been chosen by the people of India. So the due process of our constitution is being followed. And when a law is made like that, it's a legally valid law. But see, there are I know that most of the discussion up till now has been leaning towards why India is not ready. But I want to say why Uniform Civil Code right now is a necessity. Let's look at it from a point of view of women. Let's look at it from a point of view of young girls. We talk about so many rights which should be available to every single citizen of our country. Human rights, if I can call them that. So when there is a girl child and we talk about right to education, is that being curtailed in some way because a personal law allows allows in certain religions for a child to be married off at a very early age, maybe as young as 12 or 13, and the law cannot intervene. So when we say that we want to stop child marriages, how far do we get in that when there are personal laws which are valid and applicable in our country? So it affects not just the way we look after our young girls, not just the way we look after their education, taking a step forward, it also affects the way later on their inheritance will be taken care of, or maybe custody of their children will be taken care of. Even triple talaq was considered off the domain of common law, but there was a law which was enacted to make sure that inhuman practices cannot carry on. And I think we need to look at it from a more positive point of view. We need to look at it in a way which says that human rights need to be above personal law at every given point of time, and the law of the land has to be supreme if you are talking about a country which is a secular country. So we are a secular country. Of course, there's a lot of diversity, but uniform civil code does not mean steamrolling over the customs. There is going to be freedom to practice your religion. There is going to be freedom to carry on with your customs the way you deem fit. But should these customs actually encroach upon the human rights of others? And that is why a uniform civil code is necessary. Right now, I know the High Court made an observation, but the first observation was made way back in 1985 by the Supreme Court, which directed the then government to make a uniform civil code. And all over the world, any progressive democracy needs to bring about equality about certain things. And divorce, marriage, inheritance, custody for children, these issues are so vital and so big that in a democracy there needs to be a uniform way of dealing with it. So if every child goes to school, gets a similar kind of education, goes to college, gets a similar kind of education, why is it that some people will be pulled back from living the life they dream of living? There are three ways in which you can keep your country progressing and managing the different communities that live within India. One is isolation, which is currently what is happening. All the communities are separate, all the religions are separate, and they function as they deem fit. The second way of doing this is assimilation, like a lot of Islamic countries do. So you impose the majority rule on all, and everyone has to follow the law of the land. The third method, and that is what India is trying to achieve, is integration. That is uniform civil code. So you take the best practices, you come up with the draft which is acceptable to everyone, you come up with a draft which is not making our minority communities insecure about anything. We should focus on ensuring there is enough freedom to practice your religion, but at the same time, this religious freedom does not encroach upon the rights of women, rights of girls, because let's be honest, the first beneficiary of the Uniform Civil Code is going to be women. Men, they already have it their way, whichever religion you look at. So if we truly want to achieve a country where women can be placed on the same pedestal as men, Uniform Civil Code is only the first step forward. And we're being very pessimistic when we say that it's to single out communities or make them feel unwanted. Absolutely not. An acceptable uniform code will only be achieved when all the communities' best practices are taken into consideration, discussions happen, and we come up with a draft which nobody can refuse.
Thank you, Charu. So most arguments in favor of uniform civil code center around gender equality and women rights. When it comes to Hindu women or majority women, a lot of progress has been made over the past several decades, and Hindu laws have been secularized over the years. So it's generally recent arguments have basically focused on minority women. So I want to bring into the debate Hasina Khan, who has 30 years of grassroots experience with minority women, Muslim women, and other minorities as well. So Hasina ji, we would love to know your views on this matter.
Hi everybody, I just want to correct for myself. I'm a part of the women's movement in India. So here is I'm talking about the representative for the women's movement. And my most of my work is my marginalized community include the Muslim women. So this is one thing. The second thing is I just want to tell you this other panelists, we are the part of the triple talaq petitioner. in the Supreme Court, we challenging the triple talaq and polygamy halala, but only for the Supreme Court taking only for the triple talaq issues. So that's why. So and the last 30 years, and maybe this after the that time was the Shah Bano, then Sara Mudgal and so many cases. हम लोगों ने इसके बारे में यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड के बारे में बहुत सारी बातें कर चुके हैं, बहुत सारी डिस्कशन इसके बारे में हुआ है। ये कोई पहला डिस्कशन नहीं है। तो जो एरा में 80s और 90s के एरा में जो यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड की डिस्कशन होते थे, आज जो डिस्कशन हो रहा है इसमें बहुत सारे डिफरेंसेस हैं, पॉलिटिकल सिनेरियो भी बहुत डिफरेंस है। तो मुझे लगता है कि वो समझने की जरूरत है। जहाँ पे पिंकी आनंद ने कहा कि यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड हमेशा एक डिस्कशन रहा है, डॉक्टर बाबा साहब अम्बेडकर ने जब यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड की बात की थी और आज जो यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड की बात कर रहे हैं, इसमें थोड़ा सा हमें अंतर देखना पड़ेगा। जिस समय डॉक्टर यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड की 80s में बात हो रही थी, जिस समय सल्ला मुद्गल के समय पर 95 में जब बात हो रही थी, और अभी जो दिल्ली हाई कोर्ट का जो जजमेंट आया है उसके बारे में आज जो बात हो रही है, मुझे लगता है कि ये सारे एरा को देखना होगा और इसके साथ में पॉलिटिकल क्या सिचुएशन है, पॉलिटिकल क्या बैकअप है, आज का पॉलिटिकल सिचुएशन की क्या यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड और यूनिफॉर्मिटी के बारे में क्या सोचता है, क्या इंटेंशन है आज की सरकार का, मुझे लगता है कि उसको हमें भूलना नहीं चाहिए, वो समझने की बहुत जरूरत है। मेरा पोजीशन क्या है? देखिए ऐसा है कि ये जो दिल्ली हाई कोर्ट का जो जजमेंट है, इस जजमेंट को थोड़ा समझना चाहिए, क्योंकि जज ने एक सीधा एक जजमेंट दे दिया कि यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड होना चाहिए, पर एक्चुअल प्रॉब्लम क्या है? द प्रॉब्लम ये है कि वो जो मीना कम्युनिटी से जो लेडी है, औरत है, वो कहती है कि मेरा एक ट्राइबल लॉ है और उसके जरिए मुझे डिवोर्स मिलना चाहिए था, मुझे हिंदू कोड बिल मेरे लिए लागू नहीं होता। तो यहाँ पर हिंदू कोड बिल का कैसे इस्तेमाल हुआ, एक ट्राइबल्स कम्युनिटी अपने आप को हिंदू आइडेंटिटी के साथ में हिंदू कोड बिल का कैसे इस्तेमाल किया, यहाँ पर क्या इश्यूज है उसको हमें ध्यान में रखना चाहिए। सल्ला मुद्गल का इशू क्या था? 95 में सल्ला मुद्गल जब गई थी, उसके हस्बैंड ने कन्वर्ट किया था और उससे शादी किया था और सीधा कोर्ट ने कहा था यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड होना चाहिए। सल्ला मुद्गल के हस्बैंड का जो मिसयूज करना, उसको इंडिविजुअल सपोर्ट ना करके सीधा यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड का स्टेटमेंट देना, मुझे लगता है वो समझने की जरूरत है। मैं एक्चुअली इस बात पे कहना चाहती हूँ कि यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड आज की जो सरकार का जो डिमांड है, मुझे याद है कि 89 में जब अडवाणी की रथ यात्रा शुरू हुई थी और उन्होंने वहां से डिमांड किया था कि हम यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड लाएंगे जब हमारी सरकार हो। आज की जो सरकार है, प्राइम मिनिस्टर है, वो ये कहते हैं 1 नेशन 1 इलेक्शंस 1 लॉ, ये वाली जो स्लोगन्स है, मुझे लगता है कि ये बहुत जरूरी है कि हमें ये भूलना नहीं चाहिए, हम नहीं भूल आप में से कि हमारे देश में एक डाइवर्सिटी है और वो डाइवर्सिटी को हम कितना इंक्लूसिव लेवल पर, लॉ के लेवल पर हम लेने की कोशिश कर सकते हैं क्या। दूसरी बात है कि सारे पर्सनल लॉज, चाहे वो मुस्लिम पर्सनल लॉज हो, हिंदू कोड बिल हो, पारसी लॉज, ये सारे पर्सनल लॉज जो है वो पेट्रियार्कल लॉज, वो बिल्कुल मेल डोमिनेशंस, मेल पेट्रियार्कल, मेल सेक्सुअलिटी को प्रायोरिटी देता है। ये सारे पर्सनल लॉज पेट्रियार्कल लॉज है। तो ये हम क्या कहने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि यह सारे पेट्रियार्कल लॉज को हम एबॉलिश करके हम यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड ला रहे हैं। तो यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड का ड्राफ्ट किधर है? पहली बात तो यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड का ड्राफ्ट किधर है? जब ट्रिपल तलाक के समय पर जब हम कोर्ट में गए थे तो हम क्या कह रहे थे कि मुसलमान औरतों को एक सिटीजनशिप की तरह देखो, उसको मुसलमान औरत मत देखो, उसे सिटीजनशिप की तरह देखो, इक्वल सिटीजनशिप होना चाहिए, इक्वलिटी और फंडामेंटल राइट्स के बेस पर हम कह रहे थे कि ये ट्रिपल तलाक जो है वो उसको एबॉलिश करो। तब सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने कहा था कि हम पॉलीगेमी और हलाला के बारे में बात नहीं करेंगे। तब ये सुप्रीम कोर्ट का बहुत बड़ा गलती था, क्योंकि इतनी सारी मुसलमान औरतें गई, उन्होंने सिर्फ क्यों ट्रिपल तलाक की बात की, उन्होंने बाकी हलाला पॉलीगेमी क्यों नहीं लिया। अब सवाल ये भी आता है कि इतने सारे हमारे जो एक्सपीरियंसेस है, 2005 में राजेंद्र सचर कमेटी की रिपोर्ट आई थी, वो रिपोर्ट में ये कहा गया था कि जो पॉलीगेमी, क्योंकि मुस्लिम पर्सनल लॉज में पॉलीगेमी इलीगल नहीं है, लीगल है, उसके बावजूद भी हिंदू कम्युनिटी के अंदर पॉलीगेमी की प्रैक्टिसेस क्यों है, तो हम उसको आइडेंटिफाई कर रहे हैं क्या। दूसरी बात है 2017 में करंट सरकार ने लॉ कमीशन की एक कमेटी बनाई थी, और उस कमेटी के अंदर बहुत सारे ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस ने अपना रिकमेंडेशंस दिया था, हमने भी रिकमेंडेशंस दिया था। उस लॉ कमीशन की जो रिकमेंडेशंस थी, जो उन्होंने जो रिकमेंडेशंस दिए थे, उन्होंने ये कहा था, ये बीजेपी सरकार की कमेटी बनाई थी, उसने कहा था कि उस लॉ कमीशन की कमेटी से ये निकल कर आया कि हमको यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड जो है वो नहीं लाना चाहिए क्योंकि डाइवर्सिटी है। तो क्या सरकार की लॉ कमेटी जो बनाई गई थी, क्या वो उसको भी डिनाइल कर रहे हैं? तो क्या उसके कमीशन की जो रिकमेंडेशंस आई है, क्या वो सरकार उसको ले रही है क्या? तो ये मुझे लगता है कि मुद्दा को ये समझने की जरूरत है। तीसरी बात ये है कि ये लव जिहाद जैसा बिल, ये एंटी रोमियो स्क्वाड जो मैडम चारू कह रही है कि यंग लोगों के बारे में बात करनी चाहिए, चाइल्ड मैरिज के बारे में बात करनी चाहिए। ऑफ कोर्स चाइल्ड मैरिज इज नॉट अलाउड। हमारा कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन और हमारा फंडामेंटल राइट्स भी ये कहता है कि किसी भी बच्चों की शादी नहीं होनी चाहिए। तो जो यंग लोगों की आप बात कर रहे हैं, ये एंटी रोमियो स्क्वाड और ये एंटी कन्वर्जन बिल के जरिए अपने लॉ जिहाद और इस्लामोफोबिया जिस तरीके के ऐसे प्रोपेगेंडास लॉज लेकर आए हैं, इससे कौन से नौजवानों को फायदा मिलता है? इससे कौन से यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड को ज्यादा मजबूती मिल सकती है? आप यंग जनरेशन के राइट्स को और चॉइस को पूरी तरह से डिनाइल करके एक मोरल पुलिसिंग के जरिए आप ये डालना चाहते हैं कि ये जो है ये वन नेशन और वन थियरी जो है, इससे बिल्कुल भी फायदा नहीं होने वाला है। ये एक तरीके से मेजोरिटेरियन आइडियोलॉजी थोपी जा रही है इस सरकार के यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड के आइडियाज से, जिससे मुझे लगता है कि इससे कुछ फायदा नहीं होने वाला है। इससे मुझे लगता है कि जो मालविका ने जो बात रखी है कि अगर हमें बात करनी है, यूनिफॉर्मिटी की बात करनी है, तो हमें इंक्लूसिव होना चाहिए। हमें ये देखना चाहिए कि सारे पर्सनल लॉज जो है वो ब्लड रिलेशन और मैरिज को ही ज्यादा सपोर्ट करता है, ज्यादा उसको आइडेंटिफाई करता है। हमें ये देखना चाहिए कि जो डाइवर्सिटी है, जो जहाँ पर लिविंग रिलेशनशिप है, जहाँ पर होमोसेक्सुअलिटी प्रैक्टिसेस है, उसको हम किस तरीके से इंक्लूसिव करेंगे? क्या हमें उस तरह के उस मार्जिनलाइज जो हाशिए पर है, हम उसके पर्सपेक्टिव के बारे में भी हम सोच रहे हैं क्या? मुझे लगता है कि हमें जेंडर जस्ट लॉ के थियरी पर्सपेक्टिव से सोचने की जरूरत है। जेंडर जस्ट लॉ का मतलब ये होता है कि जहाँ सदियों से औरतों को कम किया गया है, उस औरतों की आइडेंटिटी को लेकर, रिलीजन आइडेंटिटी को लेकर, कल्चर आइडेंटिटी को लेकर, उसकी सेक्सुअलिटी आइडेंटिटी को लेकर, उसकी पेट्रियार्कल मेजोरिटेरियन मेजोरिटेरियन आइडेंटिटी के अंदर दबाने की कोशिश करके उस औरतों को जो दबा के रखा जा रहा है, मुझे लगता है उस सब लेयर्स को हमें समझना पड़ेगा और हमें जेंडर जस्ट लॉ के उस नजरिए से, उस दृष्टिकोण से सोचना पड़ेगा। जेंडर जस्ट लॉ का मतलब क्या होता है? जेंडर जस्ट लॉ का मतलब होता है कि ये नहीं कि औरत और मर्द बराबर है। हम कह रहे हैं कि मर्द को सदियों से एक सिल्वर स्पून दिया गया है, मतलब उसको कोई स्ट्रगल करना नहीं पड़ रहा है, उसको प्रॉपर्टी का राइट्स मिलता है, इंडियन हेरिटेंस से मिलता है, अलग अलग पर्सनल लॉ से मिलता है। वो शादी करे ना करे, वो पॉलीगेमी करे या ना करे, उसे वो प्रॉपर्टी राइट हमेशा इक्वल मिलता है। हम कह रहे हैं कि जेंडर को जो है उसको ऊपर लाना चाहिए, उसके अधिकार को ज्यादा राइट्स देकर बात करनी चाहिए। तो क्या हमारी सरकार जो है, उसका ये इंटेंशन है क्या कि हम सभी औरतों को और सभी मार्जिनलाइज कम्युनिटी को, चाहे वो अपनी सेक्सुअल ओरिएंटेशन हो, रिलीजन से हो, ट्राइबल से हो, किसी भी लोकेशन से हो, क्या हम उसको इक्वल राइट देना चाहते हैं प्रॉपर्टी के मामले में, मैरिज में, इनहेरिटेंस में, उसके स्टेटस को लेकर? अगर हम वो उसको बराबरी की तरफ नहीं देख रहे हैं, तो यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड का मतलब क्या होगा? यूनिफॉर्मिटी
Thank
का
you,
क्या
Hasina
होगा?
ji. Hasina ji, I would like to bring in.
नहीं, one
जी
second.
जी जी प्लीज
You not stop to other people just to give it allow 1 minute.
जी जी
तो
जी
हमें
प्लीज
1 second. तो ये देखना होगा कि जेंडर जस्ट लॉ जो है, यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड जो है, क्योंकि आज का यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड, आज की सरकार का यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड में हमें हजारों किस्म की शंकाएं हैं, हजारों किस्म की डाउट्स है, क्योंकि जिस किस्म के आपने कानून लाए हैं, जैसे ट्रिपल तलाक का क्रिमिनलाइजेशन बिल किया, वी आर नॉट फेवर ऑफ दिस क्रिमिनलाइजेशन ट्रिपल तलाक बिल. We want, because we approach the Supreme Court, we want to abolish the triple talaq. It means not the criminalization for the triple talaq. Personal law is not allowed the criminal law. तो ये जो ट्रांसजेंडर बिल को भी क्रिमिनलाइजेशन की तरफ लेके जाने की कोशिश हो रही थी, हर तरफ से क्रिमिनलाइजेशन की, ये जो पूरा जो क्रिमिनलाइज करना सारे पर्सनल लॉज को, और फिर कहना कि यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड जो है वो इक्वल राइट देगा, इक्वल अपॉर्चुनिटी देगा, मुझे लगता है कि वो आज का जो पॉलिटिकल सिचुएशन है, जिस किस्म के हमने टारगेटेड देखे हैं, हमने मार्जिनलाइज कम्युनिटी को लेकर जो इनसिक्योरिटी फील किया है, ये आज का यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड ये सभी कम्युनिटी को साथ में नहीं लेके जाता.
Actually, I want to quickly bring in Pinky Anand and Charu Pragya on this one. So Charu, one of the things Hasina Khanji has raised is that she has put, she's skeptical of the government's intentions, why the Uniform Civil Code is being brought up now. And can you address that? Is this targeting of a specific
before that, I want to address one more thing Ms. Khan has said. She said, why bring in criminality? Let's remember that, let's forget about Hindus and Muslims for the time being. Let's just talk of social evils that we're trying to fight as a nation. Let's look at dowry. Even with criminalization of dowry, has India been able to eradicate dowry? We're still struggling. We still have so many cases that we deal with. So similarly, for something which is as inhuman as triple talaq, and we want to do away with it, I think an element of strictness from the government in the form of criminality is necessary. We actually are a country where people will break a traffic signal also if there is no fine of 500 rupees, honestly. And everybody knows to be able to drive successfully on the roads, you have to follow the law. So criminality right now has to be there, at least for the foreseeable future. This is the way I see it. This is my point of view. And talking about yeah, I'm very quickly wrapping it up. So talking about the intention of the government, see, you know, Rajur, if you've already made up your mind to look at things from a certain perspective, you miss out on a lot of things the government is trying to do. So when you see triple talaq was not about one community or the other. It was about understanding and realizing that one section of society was sometimes indulging in a practice which was frankly inhuman, and all the cases we keep hearing even now, even after it has been criminalized, are shocking. And for any person who works in the field of women's rights and empowerment cannot be in support of something like that. And why the government is talking about it now is, I think, because we have reached a space of progression. Like I said, there is no developed country, developed democracy, progressive nation in the world which has separate laws like this. And why is it so difficult to imagine that we can come up with a scenario which is going to be acceptable to everyone? See, even in Hindu personal law, practices have been abolished, introduced, reintroduced, and altered with time. So whether it is the perfect age for marriage for women, there is discussion about revising it.
It's hard to imagine, maybe because, like Hasina Khan pointed out, we haven't seen the draft yet. What is this government looking to do? Where is the draft of
obviously, obviously, Uniform Civil Code is not going to come out of thin air. There will be a draft which is going to be available before the government.
चारू तुम आपकी सरकार
the stand she has taken for Muslim women, and I applaud that. Everything she has said about patriarchy, everything she said about bringing girls and women at par with the male gender, I really admire and applaud all that. But I think we have to stop being so cynical where intentions of the government are concerned.
Thank you, Charu. Malvika wanted to make a point, and then we'll come to you, Hasina.
It's the comparison to dowry. I want to say, yes, dowry criminal, the act itself makes an exception for customary gifts. And it is that eye in the needle of customary gifts that traditional conservative families are pulling through their BMWs and houses. So it should then be no gifts. That's the point. But even that they've made an exception. So and that parallel, certainly there is no parallel between that and triple talaq to be used in this. There is no, there's no symmetry here. I just want
very simple thing is, one second thinking. Very simple thing is, Charu, जो मालविका ने कहा है कि कोई अगर हमारे पास जो सेक्युलर लॉ है, लाइक जैसे कि आपने कहा कि बाल विवाह हो रहा है, तो क्यों नहीं हम ये हमारे लॉज के हिसाब से हम उनको पनिशमेंट दे सकते हैं। तो ये वायलेशंस है किसी भी सेक्युलर लॉ का। अगर हम डाउरी कर रहे हैं तो ये भी वायलेशंस है। अब डाउरी दे रहे हैं इसलिए क्योंकि वो क्रिमिनल हो गया, इसलिए हम ट्रिपल तलाक को क्रिमिनलाइजेशन करेंगे, ये कंपेयर करना ठीक नहीं है। ये बिल्कुल भी, देखिए आप लॉयर है तो आप ये गलत आर्ग्यूमेंट कर रहे हैं यहाँ पर कि अगर हमारे देश में अगर प्रोविजन ऑफ डाउरी एक्ट है, प्रोविजन ऑफ चाइल्ड मैरिज एक्ट है, प्रोविजन ऑफ एनी काइंड ऑफ एक्ट लॉ है, तो हमारे पास में वो लॉ के अंडर में हमें वो पनिशमेंट देना चाहिए और वो क्रिमिनल होना चाहिए, क्योंकि वो लॉ को वायलेट कर रहा है। तो ये दोनों को कंपेयर करना अपने आप में बहुत ही रॉन्ग।
So,
Pinky ma'am compare the West and say that developed countries we should be doing because they have won. That nation state model is failing in the West, as Dr. Pani has pointed out. The only way to go is we already have that and we are giving that up and going towards a balkanization. That's
a good point.
Anyone who's a practicing lawyer, they understand the.
I want to get in once. I just have two short statements to make. The whole conversation is, should we have a uniform civil code or not? Now, every argument that has been taken is, aside from casting aspersions or questioning the intentions of the time or the government or whatever it is, there is no issue on anybody saying that there should not be a uniform civil code by and large. Second is because of having good practices. The format.
I would like to clarify on that.
Sorry. Let Pinky finish and then we'll come to you, Mr. Pani. Let her finish.
With due respect, you drag the whole controversy, Dr. Pani, into the criminal justice system and how prisoners are behind bar. Until we dealt with it, we shouldn't come with the uniform civil code. Now, there's no nexus between the two issues whatsoever. Just because some wrong is being done or not being addressed doesn't mean you can't address another situation. So just on a broad front. The other, by and large, issues that have been raised, for example, would be on the factum of what the format should be. Should it be in every law or should it be as a generic thing, or that the draft is not available? So just coming back on a very broad front again on this thing. You have a country which wants a civil society which is active and treated, particularly the gender in question, women who are being maltreated in one form or the other, to be treated in a manner that civil society should treat. Now, that process has to happen. Whether it happens singly as it's happening, for example, with the triple talaq. Now, Hasina was talking about polygamy and halala. Even that is an issue which is being taken up in the Supreme Court. So, time and again, you're having the Supreme Court taking up and holding practices as unconstitutional or antithetical to human rights. You're talking about these issues that are in contention. Now, if A community or B community has it, which has these practices, you can't do anything about it. You can't change the context or the rhetoric and keep saying sensitivities. We are way past sensitivities and we are way past the time that you permit a certain horrific action to be done one way or the other without addressing it as a society. I think we should have addressed it much before what we have done today. So whether in 1985, when Jordana the Supreme Court said, or whether the Supreme Court said it or it didn't say it, we should have addressed it. You need to have practices where there will be address of generic issues across board, the horse, community, caste, literally sex, religion. These are not religious issues. Prosecution, persecution is not an issue of religion.
What about the issue? What about when you say when the government position is on the issue of uniform civil code, but Dr. Pani raised the issue of Sabrimala. Now the government changes its position with regard to Sabrimala.
Definitely, like what happened. No, Pinky, 1 second. No, like this. You are the saying in the Supreme Court in the triple talaq saying there's so many personal law vote. I'm very against for the Muslim personal law vote. Because I'm not favor of this religious organizations have no rights to talk about the gender, right? Because we always last more than 30 years. You are the shut your mouth because you don't have a right to talk about the gender because you violated Muslim women in the Muslim community. So that's why we are very against for this. So that's why we are very against for this within the Muslim community also. We're facing the lot. Many people also saying why you going to court? Why you going to court? Because why we going to court? Because we believe the court judicial system is a part of the democracy under the constitution. That's why we believe. So this is what. So जब सुप्रीम कोर्ट में हम गए तो ऑल इंडिया मुस्लिम पर्सनल लॉ बोर्ड ने बोला कि ये जो डिवाइन लॉ है इसको सुप्रीम कोर्ट इंटरव्यू नहीं कर सकता। तब मिस्टर शाह कहते हैं, जो हमारे होम मिनिस्टर कहते हैं कि ये तो औरतों का राइट है, इसको तो जुडिशियल सिस्टम ने अप्रोच करना चाहिए। लेकिन साबरीमाला के समय पर जब साबरीमाला का जजमेंट आया तब आप मिस्टर शाह ये कहते हैं कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट को कि रिलीजन के मामले में कोर्ट को ये दखल नहीं देना चाहिए। Are you standing with the All India Muslim Personnel Law Board? तो इसका मतलब है कि मुसलमान औरतों के बारे में आप बात करोगे और आप हिंदू औरतों के बारे में बोलोगे कि नहीं वो तो रिलीजन का मामला है।
So point made as it's hypocrisy.
This is actually just showing the government's hypocrisy and dual identity. And this is not
I want to move forward though. So Supreme Court has said that Uniform Civil Code will help the cause of national integration by removing disparate loyalties to laws having conflicting ideologies. Main point being, it will help national integration. And that's a very common argument for Uniform Civil Code. Now, Malvika brought up that India shouldn't really emulate the nation state model. We are much less like France or UK and much more like EU. Now, EU has been trying to do this for a long time. They've been trying to come up with very detailed laws, regulations on everything to make the whole region uniform. And that hasn't really played out very well. There is a lot of resistance across the board, and Brexit was one of the classic examples of when there is too much resistance against this kind of regulation. Now, India in its diversity is much more similar to an EU model. And Dr. Pani earlier said that maybe it makes sense to have minimal laws where you are saying that, okay, we want to achieve gender equality, we want to have these things, but not get into the granular level of what a man does, what a woman does, etc., etc. So what is your view on this? I'll let Dr. Pani come and elaborate.
Let him speak and I'd like to respond.
No, I just want to say one thing, that if we rather than comparing with Europe or anywhere else, please compare with our own national movement. We are dealing with a situation when during the national movement, women had a much more prominent place in politics than they do today. This is a situation, and that happened largely because we couldn't, before the independence, use the law to do what social movement should do. There are serious issues.
Dr. Pani, sorry, once again, Charu is leaving us. She has to go.
Yes.
So
I'm very apologetic. I have to do this, but I have prior commitment for something at 6 o'clock. So I'm going to take my leave. I also apologize for leaving in the middle of this really wonderful debate. It's an honor to be here with the argumentative Indians. Pinky ma'am, it was an honor for me to be on the same screen as you, and I hope we meet in person very soon again. Thank you very much, everyone. Namaste.
Thank you, Charu.
Thanks.
I'm sorry I have to add, but I had asked for excusing myself also at 6. So it's not convenient, you might say, but I do have to leave. So Dr. Pani, I regret I will have to leave at this point of time. I have prior commitments too, so I had mentioned that. Thank you so much, Edu.
Thank you, Ms. Anand. It was an honor to have you. So actually, we were supposed to go on till 6, but this is really interesting. So I want to continue.
Can Dr. Pani finish? Can Dr. Pani finish his point?
Yes, please, Dr. Pani, please continue.
The point made that essentially a movement which calls for change of social norms has to be a social movement. You need social reformers. You need those people who, even when you're fighting untouchability, it wasn't the law alone that did it. It was the large-scale movement, the recognition of the rights of Dalits, or even otherwise you're going to end up in a situation like as happened with the women's reservation bill, where you get all the bills, you put it in practice, you can't pass it because at some point you get the most redundant and sort of backward-looking views that actually operate in practice, though nobody will say so. So you need social movements, and to replace what a social movement should be doing with a change of law is trying to replace conviction or persuasion with the power of the state. And that will generate a sense of moral outrage, it will generate anger, and it will generate support for the most regressive of opinions. We cannot do without social movements and replace and use the law instead of social movements.
So to counter that, what if the society doesn't, the internal progress doesn't come from within the society? I'd allow Hasina ji later to talk about this in more detail around the Muslim women, which is usually the most common argument for UCC. But we sort of, that was the intention of the constitutional drafters, right? That eventually social changes will come and eventually we'll get to a place where we converge. The personal laws will converge to a point that you don't need.
Yes, but at that point they had the history of effective social movements. You had Narayan Guru, you had Gandhi himself linked his politics with a social movement. Everybody saw a prominent place for social movements. It was inconceivable for Ambedkar to think we'll arrive at a politics where it's all going to be through a law. I mean, he was making a law in the context of a society that had very effective social movements. We have abandoned all social movements. And once you do that, then it becomes extremely difficult for the law to take over what society should be doing.
Yeah. Let's say कि government किसी को consult नहीं करती, एक uniform civil code लाती है, लेकिन वही code Hindus के लिए होगा, वही code Muslims के होगा, Christians के लिए होगा. So discrimination कैसे possible होगा? Just कोई examples. Are there any examples?
No,
How
yeah,
religious
it
freedom
can't
will be
be. You cannot discuss that without a paper. It can't be in an abstract. What is the law which can be common to all, where the basis structure of each religion and cultural identity and their personal laws emerge from their religions?
आप देखो
one sec, Hasina, one sec. Yajur, please see something as basic as divorce law.
Yeah.
For Islam, marriage is contractual. For Hindu, marriage is a sacrament. Even that is doubtful, but something certainly not limited to contract. For the Christians, it is an absolute sacrament. The Indian Divorce Act brought in divorce by mutual consent as recently as in the 80s, with regard to certain other parity on rights of men and women. So you'll have to go to the root, and the root is where the emanation of these laws emerged from a marriage. Now, what is the nature of that marriage? If that is A and B, then you can't have a C and say it's common to A and B. And the hybrid needs to be discussed. The hybrid is only a special marriage act. And that's it. It's a secular act. It's a civil marriage. But the laws, it's pari materia on matters of maintenance, for example, to the Hindu Marriage Act. So,
but correct me, Malvika, if I'm wrong, but UCC was always intended to bring secular laws into personal matters. That has always been the intention. And even Supreme Court had asked India to look to Goa as you mentioned, as Goa's Uniform Civil Code as a roadmap.
So Goa Civil
Code, actually, even the Goa also
agreed, or it does not work because Goa Civil Code is riddled with exceptions. It's not really a common civil code. But yes, at that point of time when UCC was being discussed, there was you had the chance to opt in with the Special Marriage Act, where you got a marriage registered and there is a set of consequences. But what were the exceptions to the Special Marriage Act? If you opted into the Special Marriage Act, you opted out of your rights in the Hindu undivided family. So it was always a deterrent. So they do it, but there's always the simultaneous deterrent that if you do it, I lose something at the back. Now, what will that? So I am more interested in the reaction, as Hasina ji is saying, as there was an opposition to the Hindu Code Bill from the parliamentarians themselves. It would be interesting to see the reaction of the so-called uniform code when it does away with Hindu traditional law, Hindu patriotism, Hindu patriarchy or Brahmanism. It does away with rights, the question of Sapinda, the question of Gotra, all of that will have to be done away with. Hindu joint family, tax relief to joint families, all of that gets the right. If you want the best things from Islamic law has a marvelous thing by which a natural heir cannot be disinherited by will. Will the Hindu accept it because the daughter has got married outside? Will the Hindu accept that no matter what? I can only will 30% of my property. 70% goes as per the law of succession under the Shariat, which is equality, equal even to the daughter.
But Malvika, here also we have a problem about this Muslim personal laws.
I know, because
Yeah,
it's half
here also,
to the daughter.
here also not very, we are very happy to whatever is the current personal laws. But still, this a question is raising. That's why I'm saying to earlier, the law commission committee, the set up under this under the Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government, and this law commission's recommendation saying, no, we don't. Whatever the most of the participants they came and recommendations, and the law commission is released the report and say, no, we are not in favor of the uniform civil code, because your committee also saying. So what is the government's role?
Yes.
What is the government decision? So that's why they look at for this government's role, and they actually talk about the very on the paper, not like those just like the in the whatever ABCD court is saying uniform
I
civil
think
code
the
now. Or,
meaningful conversation will be when we actually have a draft. They should float a
Hasina,
draft.
so you fought against the triple talaq tradition. So do you recommend an incremental approach where in each individual personal law people look at them specifically and fight against the gender inequality and fight to get them make them more inclusive?
ऐसा है ना
Is that the approach you recommend?
जो ऐसा है कि हम लोग ने पिछले बहुत सालों से, मतलब नॉट लाइक जस्ट रिसेंटली, बहुत साल से हम बार बार कह रहे हैं कि पर्सनल लॉज में जो जेंडर डिस्क्रिमिनेशन है वो जेंडर डिस्क्रिमिनेशन को हटा देना चाहिए किसी भी पर्सनल लॉज में, चाहे वो हिंदू कोड बिल हो, चाहे वो मुस्लिम पर्सनल लॉज हो या क्रिश्चियन पर्सनल लॉज, व्हाटएवर, क्योंकि जेंडर डिस्क्रिमिनेशन के अगेंस्ट में हम हैं। अब वो जेंडर डिस्क्रिमिनेशन अगर यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड होता है या जेंडर जस्ट लॉ होता है, वी आर नॉट अगेंस्ट फॉर दिस, लेकिन वो उसको आइडेंटिफाई करना चाहिए। जेंडर राइट्स को एक अपर एक जेंडर पर्सपेक्टिव से, एक फेमिनिस्ट पर्सपेक्टिव से उसको देखने की जरूरत है। यहाँ पर इक्वालिटी का मतलब ये नहीं कि मेन एंड वुमेन इक्वल, हम कह रहे कि जहाँ पे अनइक्वल है उसको इक्वल करो, उसको पहले इक्वल करो, फिर बात हो सकती है।
I have one thing. I want to say one thing. 95 Sarla Mudgal, Hasina ji mentioned, Justice Kuldeep Singh said it's time for the Uniform Civil Code because those who opted for the two-nation theory in any case are not here now. So we should have he said that in Sarla Mudgal, 1995. And yet in 1996, Madhu Kishwar ruled, moved a petition for the rights of tribal women. And the Supreme Court said, and I'm quoting the same judge a year later, in the face of these divisions and visible barricades put up by the sensitive tribal people valuing their own customs, traditions, and usages, judicially enforcing on them the principles of personal laws applicable to others on an elitist approach or on equality approach by judicial activism is a difficult and mind-boggling effort. That's the same judge refusing to give gender equal rights under tribal law when Madhu Kishwar moved. And yet the year before, the same court in the issue of Sarla Mudgal said, those who opted for two-nation theory, in any case, now they've gone. Now we have to have uniform civil code. There's a problem here.
But Malvika, isn't this a problematic argument? This argument could be used to preserve customs like genital mutilation among the African communities in Europe.
No, so
all sorts of things.
No, we're talking of Europe, we are talking here, and everything has to be tested constitutionally, as Hasina Khan herself has argued on the triple talaq aspect. And so therefore, that is what an organic approach and evolution of law is.
But even in India, we had to fight social evils like sati as well as widow remarriage in Hindus.
Yes, yes.
So these things, there was interference by the government and it was forced to the people.
No, you actually.
I am against selective choices.
Once again, Malvika.
Choices of causes.
Once again, Malvika, I just want to tell you that remembering this. This is, the Sati case in the roof cover, the issue. This people is a 17 accused are under the arrested. After this came for this power in the BJP. The BJP is actually the release of all accused. ये जो जेंडर राइट्स के बारे में जो बात करते हैं, ये जो सिंधिया की गवर्नमेंट आई, बीजेपी की गवर्नमेंट आई, उन्होंने सारे एक्यूज को रिलीज किया, बेल उनको दिया. तो
I was talking about Sati, jab shuru mein, when the British government intervened into people's personal laws.
Yeah, that is again a very, that's a very problem. It's as if the British came and released us from something.
I agree.
They tried to use such an egregious model to justify their absolute immoral presence. So they needed some morality and they picked up on this absolute cause.
My point was only that for some grave social evil, sometimes a forced interference is...
No, but you're neglecting the movement that preceded that.
Yes, no, I wanted to observe that. Of course, there was a social movement among the Bengalis itself.
Yes.
But my point is, do you wait and let so many people suffer before you intervene because you respect their religious autonomy, or do you wait?
I have an answer.
All those women suffer?
You have to recognize that a law cannot be in an isolation as a bubble that is then pushed down upon the people like a heavy bomb. It has to grow, it has to be a step ahead and yet not completely out of step of the people. That's the point.
But that's the justification the Indian government
uses. That is the constitution. That is the constitution.
I'm sorry, I have to leave. Yeah, guys, I'm sorry, I have to leave. Yeah,
bye. No, it was actually we're over time. Thank you, Asina ji. Thanks a lot. I want to also ask Dr. Pani to conclude his view on this matter and conclude the discussion.
End with a very brief comment that it is important to recognize that the more you move against social movements, the more the pressure you're putting on the law. Essentially, a society grows through its movements, through the common, when you arrive at common consensus on what is right and what is wrong. When you finish that, either in terms of stopping protests, or even it's not just the government that is at fault. I think even the intellectual intelligentsia in many ways. You do not get the kind of even theater, for instance, that we had in the 70s. And I know that much of the movement against the emergency was led by theater, or even earlier, if you look at the Dravidian movement or look at IPTA in the left movement. I mean, these are larger processes where social ideas grow. We have ended up dropping all of that. And then we say we will just use the law to do this. That's putting too much pressure on them.
Yep, we're using a shortcut. Thank you, sir. It was a pleasure to have you and Malvika, both of you. It was really an honor to have you on the platform. It was. I learned a lot personally. I learned a lot in this conversation.
Thank you for having us. Bye-bye.